everybody? It is Dan, and we are back with another Boy Meets Squirrel. Going solo today, so I'm gonna let everything take a moment to sync up. Um, my partner, who is Lindsay, aka Squirrely Girl, is off doing family stuff today, so she couldn't make the show, and that's okay. She deserves some time off from time to time. So I am flying solo with it, which means I not only have to run the board, which is what I call it, but also make sure that I'm talking while I'm doing it. So bear with me a little bit. I'm actually not too bad with this, but from time to time I get a little lost. So, as we're letting things get synced up here and everybody to jump in, for those of you that aren't regulars to the show, and we do have quite a few regulars, and I see some of them already jumping on. Um, we are Boy Meets Squirrel. As I said, my name is Dan, otherwise known as Men Need to Be Heard. Funny how it's right on my shirt, right? Um, all right. See, you guys already are killing me, right? Dumplin spent the week in Brevard, North Carolina. Not that far from me. Looking for white squirrels. Who knew? Um, Lindsay, who's Squirrely Girl, is not in Brevard, North Carolina, but at some point she is going to come visit me, and we're going to do the show live, together from here. So, but anyway, it's been an interesting week to say the least. It's in some ways been tough, in some ways been good. So, for those of you just joining in that don't know much about me, I speak about issues that men and boys face in today's society. And we'll get to our topic of the day, which I think is an important one. And I'll get to why I chose that topic also shortly. Just quickly, the topic's going to be talking about positive role models for men and boys, or the lack thereof. And there's a specific reason why I chose that topic for today. Um, but just to kind of let you know about me, I've been advocating on behalf of men and boys for almost 30 years. Um, Depending on where you're watching me, the show goes live on multiple channels. It's on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X. We're working on sending a feed also eventually to Facebook. It just isn't working right now. There's an issue with that. But we will be adding that one in and maybe a couple others down the road. We are live every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30 talking about issues that men and boys face. So I hope you all come join us, depending on where you are. Make sure you follow us, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Let's move on from that. So as I was saying, I've had a little bit of a good week and a little bit of a bad week. And I'm not bitching and moaning or cheering or anything like that. But an interesting thing that I wanted to mention, for those of you, because somebody, who was it? The comments are coming fast and furious. Oh, Dumplin said was in Brevard. Uh, if you are someone who goes to the beach, now I live in southeastern North Carolina, but this happens in, say, Florida. It happens in South Carolina. You get the idea. And this is one of the negative things that happened. So I go to the beach. I live right near the beach. I go to the beach, not every day, but most days. And on July 4th, we were at the beach. We went early in the morning because it's the 4th, obviously, it's a holiday. And, where we are, people come from Charlotte and Raleigh by the thousands, right? So if you're a local, you go in the morning because by about 11 o'clock, they're all arriving and the beaches just get insane. Um, be that as it may, the problem was, and this is one of the things I wanted to mention, and it has nothing to do with our normal topic, but it's important. The problem was the ocean. Well, it was a bit angry that day, my friends, and unfortunately, people who are tourists, and I'll let you in on a secret, us locals call them Torons, tourist morons, for a reason. But anyway, setting the joking side of it, the tourists don't really either know what the flags on the beaches mean or pay attention to them, right? So it was. I mean, I'm very well versed with the ocean. I don't what's going on. It was very rough. And I didn't even actually go in the water, all right, because I knew. And it was a red flag day. Well, unfortunately, people come from out of town. They don't pay attention, and a young man drowned. And I'm talking 100 yards from where I was. Uh, there was a lot of speculation going on, but basically, he went out, got caught in what's known as a riptide. For those of you not near the ocean, that is the most dangerous part of the ocean. A riptide can take you, and I've had it happen. I actually had it happen 4 or 5 years ago, where I was about 10, 15 feet from the shore in waist deep water on a float, right? I wasn't laying on a float. I had one of those noodle type things, just laying, hanging on that. And within seconds, I was 100 yards off the beach. I mean, it was like that. Uh, I was fine because I know what to do, but most people don't know. They panic in those situations, and then they try and swim against the riptide, and not even Michael Phelps can beat a riptide, right? So, unfortunately, we had that young man pass away. Sadly, they haven't still to this day, and this is almost a week now, haven't found his body. And again, not too far away from us, in another beach, local beach, a young, this is heartbreaking to me. A young boy of 14 years old, same thing happened, and his brother saw it, and just devastating. Fortunately, they have recovered his body, almost 100 miles from here, in a few days. That's how fast things can change. And you might have heard there was a family down in Florida. So I'm preaching here. I'm going dad, grandpa mode on you. Guys, if you are not from a beach area and you go visit one, whether it's in the north, if you're in, say, Massachusetts or New Hampshire or Maine, to the south, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, West Coast, understand something, okay? You are not going to beat Mother Nature. She wins 100 out of 100 times. Pay attention, okay? Listen and heed the warnings from the lifeguards, because unfortunately, those two young men did not, and lost their lives. And there were, on July 4th, there's 3 beaches in my area. One beach alone, just one of the 3, had over 90 rescues that day. The other 2, I don't remember the number exactly, but it was combined close to that number. So you're talking, let's call it 150 to 200 rescues in one day. That happened Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It lessened a little bit Monday. And it's people that just do not pay attention. The beaches were red flagged. Look, I get it. You're coming into town. You're here to go to the ocean, right? It's okay to go in. Say, I usually tell people that come visit me and stay with me, um, if it's a red flag, no higher than mid shin, right below your knees. Even that's a risk, by the way, with a strong enough current. But most people are okay with that. And oh God, this is the other thing. I know I'm getting preachy here, guys, but I don't want this to happen to anyone. Just, So again, we were on the beach over the weekend, and again, rough days. Now the lifeguards in our area don't go on duty until 10. This was at about 9:30. Uh, Young family, right? Mom, dad, and one kid, young boy. Come to the beach, set up, and the boy's excited. He was 3 or 4 years old. And then dad went and left. I don't know if he was going to get coffee or whatever. He left. Mom is there. To her credit, she had the kid in a life preserver, but she's doing this with her phone and not paying attention to the kid. And he was down to the edge of the water. He did not go in, I will say that. But I sit there when that happens and I freak. I absolutely freak, because he could have stepped in that ocean. If he had gone out far enough, God knows, rip current came along, he'd have been gone. She wouldn't have even known. Put your effing phones down, people, all right? You don't go to the beach to check your Instagram, okay? Put your phones down and pay attention. And if you have young kids, please do not use your phones. You want to take a picture? Fine, go do that. But if you're sitting and looking at your screen for more than 3 seconds, you are putting your kid at risk. And again, I'm preaching because every year we go through this. Every year we see this, and as a heartbreaking to us because people come into town. It's an amazing place to be. We know they want to have fun. We want them to have fun, right? But common sense goes right out the window. And I every year we hear, for this past week, a 14-year-old, and the other man was in his early 20s. I don't remember exactly his age. This young boy of 3, 4, 5, whatever he was, could have been swept out. Thank God he wasn't. I was watching him, right? Don't rely on the lifeguards, right? They do amazing jobs. They are dedicated. They work hard. They do everything they can. But keep in mind, people, July 4th, there were ballpark in the area I was 3 to 5 thousand people just along the beach. It was that packed, right? And it normally would be on that day. There's no way, even though they have 2 lifeguards per stand, and they're only about 100 to 150 yards apart. They can't watch all those people. You just can't. They're they have to rely on things. So please, please, I'm begging all of you because it's vacation season, right? If you're going to the ocean, always remember the ocean wins 100 out of 100 times. Do not mess with it. Do not fight with it. Go enjoy yourself. Have a great time. But please, please, please heed my warnings, okay? Um, Again, I wanted to talk about that because a very good friend of mine happens to be our local weather forecaster, and he may pop on. And I talk with him about this, and every morning he does the morning show in our area. Every morning he talks about rip currents and what they can do. He talks about heating the ocean, heating the lifeguards, and people just don't listen. And unfortunately, young men this week, 2 of them lost their lives, and it's heartbreaking to me to see that, because yeah, can you imagine going on vacation and you lose your 14-year-old son? And he was not out far, by the way. You might think he was 100 yards out in the ocean. I don't know exactly because I wasn't at that situation, but from what I understand, he wasn't that far. So let's set that aside. I'm done preaching. Let me get off my soapbox. So I want to get to today's topic. And today's topic, and in some ways it relates, is what I want to talk about is the lack of positive role models for men and boys. And the reason I want to talk about that is for those of you that don't know, I do a podcast every week. The show goes up Sundays at 11, and I record them ahead. So this was a recording week. I've actually recorded 3 this week alone. And one of the men I was talking to, actually, in a way, 2 of them, but one of the men I was talking to, this was a topic we were talking about off air because we were talking about a different issue on the show. But off air, we were having a chat. And one of the things we were talking about is that, this is my opinion, there are not many positive role models for men and boys. And in fact, I argue there's virtually none at this point, right? You might argue what is a positive role model, and we can get into that. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. So please jump in the comments, let me know what you think. Uh, but it's it was an interesting conversation to have because when you really start delving into things and why there are some issues in society, a lot of it is traced. We always talk about it's traced to fatherlessness, but a subset of that is fathers are the primary role models for their children from the male perspective, as are mothers from the female, right? And this means both men and boys and girls, right? So how a boy learns to be a man, he gets from both his mother and father, right? They're his supposed to be the role models. Same for a girl, right? It's always a running joke. You always hear boys marry their moms, girls marry their dads, right? That's because they're following their quote unquote role models. Um, so that's one aspect of it, and that was something in fact, the person that was it's going to be on, and it'll be on in a couple of weeks, the show that we did, but I'm going to have him back to talk about this again because we really got into it a little bit. That we think that our opinion is it's a large part of the problem that's out there with relation to issues in society. And a couple other things we were also talking about was that you talk about how the media portrays men or boys, right? The bumbling idiots, the Homer Simpson stereotype. And in a manner of speaking, that's a role model for a young man or, you know, a, a toddler all the way up. If you really go that far, right? So you grow up watching these things, and that's what you think a man is. Or you see another common one, and this was a topic that we got into, but he also took another perspective is he thinks that's one of the things that skews how women view men, right? Because and you hear it with videos on the various social medias. I think he's got a valid point here. One of his positions is that because men are portrayed as incompetent, bubbling idiots, can't take care of themselves, don't know how to feed themselves, all that stuff, that and it's gone on for 3 or 4 generations now, that skewed the perspective so that women literally believe that's how men are, right? And again, that's not a positive vision towards men, it's a negative. And we got really into it. And I thought that would be a good topic for today for you guys to get your opinions on it. Because it does create problems, and I was kind of chatting with somebody else about it. Like I said, I talked with a second person who I was interviewing for a podcast, um, and just kind of broached this to him as well. And he was talking about rap music. Now, I'm going to be upfront with you. I have never liked rap music. I don't like country music. I have never liked country music. I don't listen to either one. Never have, never will. Okay. It's just not my jam. I'm old school classic rock. There hasn't been a good song put out in the last 30 years, in my opinion. Okay. Um, just that's me. And that's okay. But, the very few rap songs that I know, I don't even know if they're qualified as rap, would be what my kids was listening to 20 odd years ago. So it would be, you're going to have to help me. Eminem, I know, is one of them. I know Eminem's one of them, but I don't even know the rappers. All right. But listening to some of those songs, I could see how that is a negative thing, right? And they are role models. I hate to say this, but people tend to look at celebrities as role models. The big one for women right now is Taylor Swift. Now, I don't care for her music. I think it's very basic. I am a musician. I'm not certainly not, John Lennon and Paul McCartney. I've written songs. They've never gone anywhere. I've been in bands. I haven't been in a while, but I was in bands for 35, 40 years. I think I'm fairly well versed on music. And I don't knock Taylor Swift in the sense that she's made a hell of a career. She's a billionaire. More power to her. She has latched into her niche. She has mastered it. But she is not Tchaikovsky, okay? She is not Lennon and McCartney. She's not. And that's okay, right? But where I want to go with that is setting all that aside, she is still a role model for what, 2 generations of girls now, right? Um, on the boys' side, and I honest with you, I could say a lot of negative things about her role model as Taylor Swift being a role model. There are a lot of negative, but I can also say there's a lot of positives, right? She's a role model that's in the sense that, and I'm sure some people will disagree with me. Please do in the comments, right? I want to have a conversation about it. But she's a billionaire. She is a highly successful woman. She put her nose to the grindstone to do it. Her songs are all the same thing. She's whatever, mid 30s, and she's writing about things that 17-year-old girls still deal with, right? Losing love and all that, boy crushes and all that. Um, but that's her niche. That's what she should be doing if she wants to be a successful business person. And she's a positive role model in that sense. And as I said, I was having this conversation with the second person, and I said, those are great points. And we were talking about that. I said, what's the one for the boys? And this is where I want you guys to chime in, all right? Especially the younger ones. I can't name one. I cannot name a positive role model, celebrity, for boys or men right now. And I know people are going to jump in with, people like Jordan Peterson and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about mainstream people, right? Um, who is there? Whether it's in music, movies, whatever. I don't see a lot of positive in general, and I can't name one that's like the one. Now, when I was growing up, there were tons of them, right? I grew up in the 70s. Danny, so I'll get to the comments in a little bit, guys. Danny DeVito is the image of perfection. That was a good one. Stephen Gnome said that. Guys, if you make me laugh, I'm going to call it out. That was awesome. Um, I had a lot of role models growing up. I had male teachers who were role models. There's not a lot of male teachers left anymore. And the ones that are left are getting out. Whole other conversation, but they're being driven out, right? Um, I had my dad, of course, which again, there's a lot of unfortunately fatherlessness homes. And my dad did what he could. I've shared that story before. I'm not going to go too deep into it now, but he did what he could, right? I had my best friends. I had two best friends. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. I had two very dear friends. One of them, well, both of them had parents that survived the Holocaust. And one of them in particular, his dad was a role model to me, and he's passed on now. But I heard things about the Holocaust that if I ever shared them, the real stuff, not what's in the history books or movies or all that, the real, it would hurt. As horrifying as it is, you can't even begin to imagine, right? I heard the truth. But he was also a role model, right? He would share his wisdom with us. He is actually one of the reasons why I have my channel, because I'm paying him back by and honoring him for by having my channels and talking about the issues, right? And he used to talk about life lessons, right? And he was very subtle about it. So, and as I said, it was a Jewish neighborhood. They had Seder dinner and all that. I ended up going to synagogue more than I did my own church back in the day, because they were my best friends. But he would, as we were sitting and having dinner, conversations going on, he would impart life lessons, lessons that I still hold to today. So I had that as a role model. I saw someone mention, Richard Corwin said over on YouTube, no more Boy Scouts, right? I had Boy Scouts. I had, I was a Cub Scout, then a Weeblo, and then I started Boy Scouts. I actually ended up leaving Boy Scouts in my sophomore year of high school because I was playing sports and I just didn't have the time. But my scout leaders were all male, role models. Those have largely disappeared, right? Um, so I had a ton of different role models within my own personal realm. Um, you know, Celebrity role models, that wasn't as much of a thing back then. Uh, yes, there were celebrities. Yes, people listened to them. They didn't worship them like they do now. Of course, people are going to go, yes, they did, because the girls were all in love with David Cassidy and Peter Frampton. Back then, the boys were in love with Farrah Fawcett. But there was that kind of stuff, but that they weren't viewed necessarily as role models. Whereas now, um, I think it's a little different. People, especially with social media and the say this three times fast, proliferation of it, and the lack of people having the interpersonal relationships within their lives, right? Uh, you know, I had friends. We used to hang out all day long. This time of year, summertime, I never saw my parents, right? Um, I would leave the house 9 a.m., 8:39, meet my friends. We might be on a bike ride. We were more often than not either playing baseball or football, whatever. The rule of thumb we had was be home when the lights come on at night, the street lights. So I'd be gone from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. My parents didn't have a clue where I was. No cell phones, no nothing. Um, but I had friends, and as I said, I had my friends' families. So even though my mother and father divorced when I was a few months old, right? I still had that quote unquote father figure in multiple ways in my life. I had my own dad, my friend's father. The other good friend I had, his father was a role model also, not to the same level. He was a working man. He was rarely home. He was a workaholic type, right? But he would share stories, and he served in World War II. He fought at D-Day, and he would share the stories he learned from that. And those are the things that when boys hear that stuff, it helps them learn how to be men, right? That is missing right now. And the untold thing, the thing nobody wants to talk about or acknowledge is, especially with boys, they will always seek out a role model. You might call it always seek out a leader. Always. It's a given. And it is going to be a man. Sorry, ladies, I'm not saying that to upset you or call you out or anything. No mother can fulfill that role. And you could argue back at me, and I would agree with you that no father could fulfill the role of a mother to a girl, right? There is no way a mother can be dad. I'm sorry. And that's not a slam on them, that's just reality. So when boys don't have that within the home, they're going to go seek it elsewhere. In my day, like I said, I had friends, family, and all that. Um, Now that's largely not available. So they're seeking it out online, and that's creating a whole other issue. So that's where I want input from you guys, especially you younger guys, right? Because I think this is a fascinating topic, but it's one that I can talk about my generation. I can talk about my kids' generation. My kids are in their 30s, they're almost 40. I want to know, especially those of you in your 20s, what is it like now for you guys? And what was it like growing up? Um, who are your role models? And I'll get to the comments shortly. Who are your role models? And what I really want to know is the ones that you have, why do you have them? Because I think this is fascinating, and you guys can teach me this. And for the ladies, I'm curious to get your opinion on it, right? In the sense, especially if you're a mother of a son. That's why I wish Lindsay was on today, because Lindsay's happily, Eric is there with them all the time when he can. He's in the military, but you know what I mean. That they don't need to go find other ones. They have their dad. But I would love to get her opinion as a mom on what she sees in the value of it and what she would do if, God forbid, something happened to her husband, right? Because the other thing that happens is, families break up, dad goes lives one place. He might get every other weekend and the quote unquote pizza date, which is about 15% of the time. Can you be a dad and do some stuff in that time? You absolutely can, and you should. It's not enough. It's not enough. And all the data shows that. Boys are much better off being placed with their fathers. It's not even up for debate, right? If you don't believe me, go read The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell, or go watch the podcast I did with him 8, 9 months ago where we talked about that. And again, that's not knocking mothers, okay? It's just the reality. Um, so, yeah, kind of jump into comments. I'm going to go into the comments now, but let me know what you think on all of this. Do you think it's a part of the problem that we're seeing? Do you have role models? If you're an older guy like me, an OG, who were your role models back in the day? Because maybe it'll help some of the younger guys to go find them. Because for those of you that don't know, I have my Patreon and I have subscriptions and all that. This also triggered me to do something I haven't done before with those guys, right? So I have my private groups, my members only stuff and that. And I do a periodic video, just try and do one every week with them, which might be 3 to 10 minutes, somewhere in there. And I'll talk about various topics with them. But this inspired me to start doing, I'm calling my Wednesday Wisdoms, right? They're going to be very short, sweet videos. They might be as little as 10, 15 seconds, no more than 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, right? But it's going to be things that I think are important for men or boys to know, especially the younger ones. Because most of my private members, my subscribers, and all that tend to be on the younger side. And I'm not saying this to shill to get you guys to sign up for subscriptions and all that. I hope you do. Um, it helps support the channel and all that, and I think I give a lot of value for it. But I want to do this because I want to, in my own small way, and this is not to make myself a hero or anything like that. I want to contribute and be that role model, if you will. And if I can do a 30-second video on a topic, and I've already filmed a half dozen of them, so they're going to roll out every Wednesday. And I picked topics that are germane to life. All right. And I have, it's funny because I do something similar to this with my personal training clients and my people that I train for powerlifting, right? So I have people that compete in powerlifting. I am their coach slash trainer. And I do something similar to this with them. In fact, some of the topics I'm using are directly pulled from what I do with them, where I send them out, I send out to them, usually through email, a weekly thing that's inspirational, right? So they get their training plan and all that. Or, when they're meeting with me every week or whatever, we talk about their training and all that. But I send them a separate email every week to all of them where I share with them a thought, and a recent one I was doing was, I had one of my clients is going to be competing in late July. It is a very hard competition that he's going into. And he is probably, well, almost assuredly not going to win. All right. And that's not a knock on him. He has done all the work. But who he's going to be against, it would be like me going against Brian Shaw in Strongman. All right. I'm not going to beat Brian Shaw. Okay. But this was the experience, or this is the lesson I was sharing with him, which is, and then I shared it with all of them, which is, don't look at it as you're in this competition to win it or beat anyone. If you do, that's great. But look at it as an experience, an opportunity to compete against the best, right? I don't talk much about it, but I was a competitive rower for about 10 years, okay, in my 40s and early 50s. I have competed at U.S. Nationals. I have competed at Worlds, okay, against the very best. And there were times that I don't, it's not on camera right now, but on the wall above me, I have my powerlifting medals, and I also have some of my rowing medals, right? And there's trophies and all that crap. Um, I value them. I appreciate them. But what I value more, and I got this from one of my coaches, okay? And I'll share a story real quick on it. So we went to the World Rowing Championships, all right, which is, there's different levels of it within, the things, but we were in an open category, which means anyone can compete. And I was in a very, very good boat. It was a top level boat. It was number 4 in the US. It was where we competed at nationals. We were number 4 in the US by literally hundredths of a second. We were good. And we did not row the best race on that. We should have won it. We went to Worlds. We won our heat by, and now rowing is, wins and losses are seconds, if not tenths or hundredths of a second. I've won and lost races by a hundredth of a second. We won our heat by something like 35 seconds. We just crushed everybody. And then we got to the second heat. We won that also. Not as big, but obviously the competition's better. Then we go to the final. And we are, there are 6 lanes in the final. We were ranked second, right? We had a, so lane choice goes to boat 1, the top one, lane 2, right? So we were right next to the other boat, which happened to be from Germany. Oh man. All right. So this was a mixed boat, men and women, 2 men, 2 women in what's known as a 4. The 2 women in the German boat were bigger than me, height wise. Okay. I'm like, hi, how you doing? No joke, right? Um, we get on the line, starter drops the flag. They took 2 strokes and we never saw them again. And I'm not kidding. They destroyed everybody. Long story short, we found out later that three of the four had competed in the Olympics before in the 80s. They were top level rowing, right? I value that race, even though we got crushed more than any race I won, because I got the opportunity to compete against the very best in the world. Now, mind you, they're a little older, right? They weren't active Olympians, but they weren't that far removed from it. But I'm a big believer, and I share this with my training clients also. Iron sharpens iron, right? Push yourself, challenge yourself, go against the very best. So that's an example of a lesson, right, that I would give to them that I'm going to be doing with this, because those are dad lessons, right? Is don't be afraid to lose. And that's what my training client is. Well, he's wavering on, well, should I really go? Because I'm not going to win. And he's right. He's not going to win. And that's okay. And I said to him, go and compete. Enjoy the experience. If you're DFL, which is dead effing last, okay, who cares? You still competed and won. And that's what my rowing coach used to say. The win is not the end of the race, it's starting the race. It's being on the starting line. Anything after that is gravy. And that's something you should take forth in life, right? So there you go, guys. There's an example of a dad lesson that I'm talking about. Got way off topic with that, but anyway. All right, I'm going to jump into some of the comments because there's a lot of them. So, again, what we're talking about is the lack of positive role models, at least in my opinion now, for men and boys. Um, who are the current ones for the younger men? I'm genuinely curious. I cannot name one, not a single one. And I saw some in the comments, and we'll get to it. I can name one for the women or the girls, which is Taylor Swift, right? Um, Let me know what you think. So I'm going to jump into some of the comments. I'll be jumping around to the various things because we're on four different places. So Richard's been very active. Richard, my man, nice to see you. He said he learned about riptides when he was a boy. Riptides are not something to mess with. I'm not going to go too deep into that. And he says, I enrolled in a swim class shortly thereafter at 4 years old. Just remember, I'm a pretty good swimmer. Not great, but good. I've done triathlons, and I held my own in that, right? But against a riptide, the one time I got caught in it, I know what to do, which is swim to the side, not against. So you go at a diagonal to get out of it because they're not very wide. I realized then, even doing that, how exhausted I was, and that's what does you in, right? If you fight the current. So you can be the best swimmer in the world. The rip current's still going to beat you. Best thing to do is sit there, tread water, let it pull you out, however far it is, hands over your head, and start yelling. The lifeguards will come get you. Patrick said, "Test, can you read it?" Yes, I can, sir. And then Richard also, I already mentioned this about the Boy Scouts. Uh, and he had the can't spell crap without rap. I'm kind of with you on that. All apologies to those of you that like rap. It's just not my thing. I never have enjoyed it. My oldest son was big into Eminem. That's how I know that. I couldn't. If I heard the songs, I'd probably recognize them, but I couldn't tell you who they were. Richard also said, um, Batman, Superman, Lex Luthor, and those are role models. And I'm not going to knock Richard for saying that because that is what's available to a lot of kids as the role model, right? I saw somebody had already commented about talking about like Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, or I've never seen it, but Harry Potter or something like that. I've heard of young men who are now in their 30s, those were their role models. And I'm like, those are fictional characters. If we're at that point seriously, where we have to, and this is not knocking Richard in any way, shape, or form, please, sir, do not take it that way, okay? If we're looking at our role models being Batman, Superman, we got a serious problem. That means it backs my point up that there are none for men and boys, right? So yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to go with that, and that's great thing. Sean said he misses his dad. He passed 2 years ago. Sean, I'm sorry you lost your father. It's a void, right? It's not something you can ever replace, in my opinion. You just can't. I lost my dad about 10 years ago, but I really lost him from birth. And I'm not going to get deep in that story. I've shared it many times before. You can go watch replays, by the way. All of our shows, the replays, the ones Lindsay and I have done, going back, are available on YouTube. You go into the live playlist; they're all there. So if you ever miss a show and you want to check it out, go there. Um, but it's I never really had the full dad role model. He did everything he could. He did, but my mother did everything she could to prevent it. Um, but I truly appreciate what he did do. You know, and that is something that no one could ever replace. No other man, even though I had other excellent role models. It's in my opinion, it's just not the same. And I think this holds true more for boys than girls. I really believe that. Research is showing that also. Again, I reference back to it's right over. I can hold it for those of you who can see it. Right where my finger is, you'll see there's the book, The Boy Crisis by Warren Farrell. You really need to read that book. Um, Not just if you're a young man, not just if you're a dad. If you're a single mom raising a boy and you don't read that book, you are doing the biggest disservice you possibly could to your son. Warren does an outstanding job. He is a role model to me, if I may say so. Okay, he is a hero to me. That book, he goes into detail why it's so important to make sure that men have role models. Unfortunately, we don't have many. So again, I'm just kind of jumping in the comments. I've been rapping, pun intended, for a while now. So Jake said, whoops, I hate when I'm jumping between them. TikTok likes to jump ahead. You're the man. Where were you 30 years ago? I was probably doing what you're doing. You said you got divorced back in 1983. I was going through a divorce 30 years ago, and it's why I do what I do now. Um, Charlie, oh, I missed this earlier. Good time Charlie stopped in to say hi and support me. Guys, Charlie's story. If you don't follow Good Time Charlie, he's got, and I'm saying this with all love, he's got some crazy videos out there that have nothing to do with what we're talking about. They are awesome. I love them. I watch them all. If you want an offbeat, he might be okay with me saying off kilter videos. Um, they're kind of out there, but they're fun. Go check them out. But also check out his videos where he shares his story where he was falsely accused of horrific things and completely innocent on them. And he was kind enough to come on my podcast a few months back and share it. Check that one out too. All right. So I'm just looking at various things here. Um, Charlie jumped in a decade in Cocoa Beach. I live. This man is preaching the truth, talking about the riptides and listen to the lifeguards, people. I'm going to preach this probably for the rest of this show because I don't want anyone to lose their life, but lose a family member. Watching that young man's brother, the 14-year-old who passed away, on TV. And my buddy, like I said, works for the news station. I wanted to send him a message. I haven't. To say, what was this reporter thinking interviewing the brother? Because he's obviously grieving, right? And I get they want to share the story. I've worked in media. I know if it bleeds, it leads, that type of thing. That young man, and if the brother was 14, this guy was probably 16, 18, somewhere in there. I mean, he looked that age. What are you interviewing him for? Let them have some peace. Jesus. Anyway, Sully wants to know, what does my shirt say? Men need to be heard, which is the name of this channel. Shirts are available. Go in my link tree. It'll link you to my store. Everything you do supports this channel, enables me to do what I do, and a portion of it goes towards supporting a domestic violence shelter we're trying to open for men called Daddy's House in Atlanta. Lindsay and I will be doing more on that shortly on that. Sandstar said, "Go if you go to the beach, you're not familiar with the ocean. Don't go deeper than you can handle." Basically, yeah, agreed. And even then, trust me, I see it every day, guys. Okay, if the flags are up or you see the waves coming in, knocking people over, do not go in more than mid shin, below your knee, because I've seen rip currents pull people. Okay, I've seen people standing, and this is no joke, 2 feet in, ankle deep thing, and a rogue wave come in, knock them on their ass, and pull them out. Not far, but enough, right? It's something I see every day this time of year. Please heed the warnings. Trust me, Mother Nature will always win. Um, Let me see some other. Oh, I cannot possibly say the name, and I'm not even going to try because I would butcher it. I guess it's Montezuma. Lack of support for veterans would be a good topic. That's actually something we are going to be talking about. My good friend Bill Corbett runs Veteran Fathers. He's a friend of Lindsay's also. And I talked to Bill. We haven't talked much in the last couple of weeks because we're both super busy, but I've talked to Bill. He's been on my podcast. He's the one trying to open Daddy's house. I've talked with him about coming on and doing a live with us. We had Father X on a couple of weeks, which people loved. So at some point, I will get Bill on, and we're going to talk. One of the things I want to talk about, and Lindsay can talk more about it because her husband is active military, about the lack of support for current military members and veterans in many ways. Dumpling wanted to know, could I define positive role model? That's a great question, and I don't think I have, and I apologize for that. So to me, I guess the way I would put it, and I don't think there's right or wrong on this per se, a positive role model is someone who is trying to help you become better. So for a man or a boy, it's a person who is trying to help that man or boy live a better life in whatever way it might be, which is why I started doing my Wednesday Wisdoms, right? Because if I share that knowledge and it helps one of those guys to have a better life, or to challenge themselves, or to reach for the stars, if you will, and I'm going all trainer on you here, then I've accomplished my goal, right? Sorry, my ear is itchy from water at the beach. Uh, that's what I define as positive. If you are doing something out of the goodness of your heart, too, genuinely mean it to improve a man or boy's life, that's a positive role model. And you can say the same thing for girls, by the way, right? So as I shared some of the stories at the beginning of the show where my best friend growing up's father was that person. He was not doing it. He wasn't looking for a thank you or anything. And I could never thank him enough to be blunt anyway, but he was doing it to make me a better person, to make his son a better person. That's what I'm talking about, right? And that it's going to vary what those things might be. So that hopefully answers that question. Jacked up, how you doing, buddy? He said hi. I'm a little behind on messages. Nikki. Now wait, Nickelback has some good music. I never said they didn't. What? Somebody else trashed Nickelback and I missed it in the comments? Probably. I actually like Nickelback, but they're not rap either. Rap and country, dead nose for me. All right, so we're looking at all right, so we're getting some of the role models, and you're gonna have to forgive me. Some of these I don't know. Hopskin, I don't know what that is. Somebody please help me. Who or what is a hopskin? Mr. Beast. That's an interesting one. Now, I follow Mr. Beast. Great videos. Um, if that's a role model for you, I'm not knocking it. Please don't think I am, but I would consider that per se a role model. That's a celebrity, right? Um, does that mean you're not going to get positives from it? I agree. Absolutely, you can, especially Mr. Beast. I mean, he does amazing things. I just heard he was doing something in Africa to bring water to a village. Actually, it's a little old. It was not recent. It was a few months ago. That is a positive role model. I will grant you on that one. So I take back what I said. That's a positive role model. David Beckham. Ooh. Ooh. Richard saying got to go. David Beckham. That's an interesting one. Again, I don't follow soccer because I don't think it's a real sport. Jump on me. Go ahead. It's not football, guys. Uh, I'm an American football player. What can I say? Uh, I'm kidding, by the way. How so with David Beckham? I'm curious. Because I honestly don't know I know he plays soccer and he was a huge star, but how is he a role model? I guess is what I'm asking. John Bon Jovi. That's an interesting one. Again, what I want, guys, I'm not knocking what you're saying. I'm asking how are they role models for you guys? So jump in, guys. The Rock. I'm skipping over to Danny DeVito because I already covered that one. The Rock. Now, The Rock, that's an interesting one because I can see your point, but again, celebrity, right? And somebody right after that said The Rock is a sellout. I don't agree with that either. I think in some ways he is a positive role model. I also think he's a negative role model, right? Anyone who does not know, forget think, know that The Rock is juicing and has for years, you're crazy, okay? You don't look like that naturally. Sorry. I know what I'm talking about. I don't fault him for it, by the way. I will tell you right now, if there when I was trying to get into the upper levels of football, and I was pretty good, but I was certainly not going to a Division I school or the NFL at any point. But if I knew that by juicing I could have made the NFL, I would have shot so many needles in my ass every single day and done it 100 days out of 100. All right. So I don't fault people like The Rock. It's what makes him who he is. He's become what he is because of his appearance. Those I don't know a ton about pro wrestling, but I know enough to know what they do to their bodies is on par to what NFL players do. So they have to, in some manner of speaking. So I don't fault them. I don't view that side of it as a positive role model because the problem is, while I understand why he does it, and I don't judge him in the sense of saying, he shouldn't be doing it, because I get why he's doing it. But I worry about, the 12-year-old boy, skinny little boy that's never going to be a wrestler or never go to the NFL or any of that stuff, deciding to juice because simply because The Rock does it, right? I'll show my age again. Back in the day, Hulk Hogan, do your prayers and take your vitamins, and that'll make you strong, which was a load of crap because he was juicing also. Um, you know, to me, that's like cartoonish almost, and that's in general. Again, I understand why they do it. I don't view that as a positive, and that's just my opinion. And you could disagree with me, and I'd be fine with it, right? David Goggins, there's a good one. So again, why, guys? Why do you view David Goggins as a positive role model? I want your opinion. Medical Salt says LeBron. There's another one. I just do not see LeBron as a positive role model. I just don't. Um, and I would say that most professional athletes, there are some amazing ones out there. Don't get me wrong, but people look up to them not for who they are as people per se, but what they look like. If that makes sense to you. So they're not positive role models. Now I know, by the way, I know LeBron has done amazing things for charities, right? But that's not why maybe you're Medical Salt Lake. Maybe that's something you're aware of, and that's why you view him as positive. More power to you. I agree with you there. Okay, but if you do it because in his mind he's the greatest basketball player ever, Michael Jordan. Sorry, I had to look off there. Um, and I'm saying that because I live in the town where Michael Jordan grew up. But I also think that you know just because he's probably the best NBA player now, that's not a role model to me. Okay, what I'm talking about is how does that change your life, right? Admiring LeBron, or in my case, right, when I was growing up, I'm a Yankees fan. Greg Nettles, quote unquote role model as a baseball player, never did anything to change my life. So I don't count that as a role model. See what I'm saying? All right. Love Greg Nettles. Emulated him to a T. Everything I could studied everything about him. Okay. That's not a role model to me. He did not quote unquote change my life, if you catch my drift. But again, maybe it did, and that's why I'm not saying you're wrong. I want to get your thoughts on that. Blake said to love your channel. I think you make a lot of that points. Thank you. Um, Dumplin said, "Do we know too much about people now?" That is a great question, and the answer is yes. Right? I think it's true everywhere, but more so in the U.S. than anywhere. My opinion. Um, we love to build people up, then tear them down, then build them back up. It's like a Hollywood movie over and over again. So we find someone, I'm talking primarily celebrities, could be politicians and all that. We then turn them into heroes, we build them up, we make them the greatest thing ever. Then we learn something about them and we just destroy them. Just utterly destroy them. Then, and this is a pattern you see over and over again, then when they're at their very lowest and destroyed, and maybe they do something positive or whatever, then we start redeeming them, right? Oh, they've redeemed themselves. So now they're good again. We do that over and over again. It's one of the worst aspects of American society right now. And we also, now that's translating into what's happening online. You see it all the time, right? Where people, sorry, I need a quick drink. They'll find a creator. I've had it happen to me where they love me as a creator, then I say something they don't like, then they hate me, and they try, they come at me, and then suddenly they like something I said, and they try and build me up. um, you know we're all human beings, we're all flawed. I am certainly not perfect. None of you watching this, I hate to break it to you, are perfect. We all make mistakes. I have, and I've admitted many times when I have. But yeah, we do know too much about people, I think, and we look for ways to either think things that they say, do, or that we can find out about them to help us build them up or tear them down. So, Dumplin', I agree with you completely. Jay Smartass. Jay, I can't. You gave me the tiny diny. Thank you. Roar. Or roar, right? Lindsay's not here, so we can't do the hat and mustache. And no, I'm not yeehawing. And just here sent me a heart. Thank you, sir. Um, Jay Smartass said Keanu Reeves is a good one for his charities and how he treats his fans. Um, Again, I don't know a lot about him. Love his movies. I have heard that he does a lot of charity work. And I remember seeing a few things back a while ago. I don't know if it was on Facebook, it was one of the social medias where they listed things he had done for people, just average people. And yeah, that's, again, for the people that he did that for, I would grant you that's being a positive role model. For me, that's not. He's not a positive role model for me. If you get what I mean, right? If I know one of the things he did was he bought them what they were penniless, and he bought them. I don't know if it's a house or something like that. I don't remember. There was so many of them. It's kind of confusing my brain. But he did something to make sure they had a place to live, right? Um, for that person, that's being a role model because that's helping them individually. Absolutely, he's a role model. And yes, we can admire that and learn from it. Absolutely. But is it really impacting my life? I don't know. I can make arguments both ways with it. And that's the beauty of this, right? Each of us is unique. If you find positivity in that, awesome. Not knocking it in any way. But one of the things I'm noticing is we're seeing celebrities, sports figures. There's not a couple people, like over on YouTube. Where was it? I'm trying to scroll back here. Why are we asking if England's going to win? Sean said I missed his dad. Sorry, I was looking for who it was. Sean, his dad was his thing. I'm not seeing a lot of that. That's what I'm saying, right? Is that's what's missing, guys, right? I would love to see the guys on here, one right after the other, naming not celebrities, not sports figures, but individuals in your life. Could be, and I've talked about it. I had male teachers that were role models. I had my primarily my Cub Scout Weeblos Scoutmaster was my a role model for me. My friend's father, so on and so forth. Though you don't have to give me names, but that's what I'm talking about. Those are the role models that dramatically impact your life. Celebrities, they do. I'm not saying they don't, but you get what I'm saying? It's not the same. And that's what's missing. That's the point. My opinion, that's the most important point I'm trying to make. And you can disagree with me. I have no problem with that. None. Um, and Dumpling then asked, knowing what you know now, would you put scouts as a role model? Again, in my case, I would not say it was Boy Scouts that was the role model. It was the man who led my troop that was the role model, right? He taught me everything I know now about camping and wilderness living and all that, right? Um, I can do all that stuff. If I had to go live in the woods, I would survive. No problem. Wouldn't be easy. I'm not saying it would, but he taught us how to build shelter. He taught us, I lived up north at the time. In the wintertime, what if you get lost in the woods? What should you do? I remember these lessons 50 years later. Okay. My dad with hunting, right? So again, if I got lost in the woods, how would you find food? Well, I don't hunt now and I don't fish because I find them both monumentally boring. But if I had to go and, feed myself, if you will, I could do it. Those lessons are up here. They're not forgotten. And that's what I'm talking about. So, knowing what I know now about the Boy Scouts, I would still say yes, there are role models within it. It's individual. The individuals within the Boy Scouts, not the organization, right? Difference. That's what we have to separate, guys. That's my point. Um, oh, Jay Richards saying, being fellow Gen X, well, I'm a boomer, not Gen X. I got to grind you up about the bedroom scene behind you. Why? I live at the beach, dude. I'm going to bet you live in the city. People love to mock me because I have a seashell bedspread. I hate to break it to you guys, but I have tons of guests. You just don't see them, okay? I live in a beach town. They come and visit. They come and stay with us. Lindsay will eventually be coming to visit. More on that down the road. If you don't like it, that's fine. I don't care. Okay? I do like it. They also mock me about the color of the room, which is salmon. I call it orange, but it's salmon. I live at a beach. Okay, we have beachy colors here. I hate to break it to you. All right, this isn't upstate New York where I grew up, where those are the people that mock people like me with that. So just saying, to each his own, guys. All right, going back to some of the other one. Boy, TikTok just jumped ahead. Where was it? There was another one I was where oh, okay. Mem Nation. I'm in my late 20s. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I don't have a role model. That's what I'm hearing a lot, right? And meme, why is that? Why do you think that is? And I'm not knocking you in any way, but that's what I'm hearing from the younger guys, right? Dumpling, I feel I'm older, but I feel like I've compartmentalized my heroes, fathers, friends, professional, spiritual. Yes, I agree. That's what happens. You're not alone in that. Um, it's a big issue, I think, especially for boys, because they will seek out that role model. One of the things that I'm acutely aware of because I've done research on it, if you go and look at young boys and teenagers that join gangs, they're almost always from fatherless homes, like damn near 100%. And the reason is, and people have done the research, people smarter than I have done the research on this. The reason is boys are inherently drawn to find a male role model. They have found boys in gangs where they've done research that have had tremendous mothers, but no father in their life. Mothers who went above and beyond times a million, and they boys still ended up joining a gang because they were looking for that father figure, and it wasn't there. All right. So yeah, I do think that is part of it. Jay wanted to know where's Squirrel. She's off with friends and family. Little, let's call it a vacay. And if she wants to share what she's doing next week, I'll let her. But it's I miss her. I'm not gonna lie. She's like my daughter. She really is. She's the same age as my oldest daughter, and I think of her as a daughter. Crazy Llama said Aragorn is the only role model you need, except maybe Samwise Gamgee. Lindsay would love that. Squirrely would love that comment. But again, fictional characters, right? FNT said Keanu, and I'm assuming you mean Denzel, because Demisel W. I'm assuming is Denzel. By the way, I just watched a movie with him and the guy that was Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody, Remy something or other, and I'm forgetting the name of the movie. It came out. It's on Netflix. Came out like 2-3 years ago. Phenomenal movie. You'll have to go find it. Phenomenal movie. It's a um, loved it. Uh, Roger said, unfortunately, I never had a role model. My dad was emotionally absent, didn't teach me anything. Again, that happens, right? And that's what I'm talking about. I can just sense by his comment, and again, I'm reading into it, I admit, but there's a void in his life, right? That we have that. And Coach Wallace said, culture says masculinity is toxic. That's another thing, right? I could do a whole show on that. We have done a whole show on that. But that's why, one of the reasons why we don't have those positive role models, because they've been driven away, right? Um, using my Scoutmaster an example, um, he would probably be vilified. Not, and it's nothing to do with him committing a crime, okay? But he was pretty blunt. Uh, I've shared before. I used to help coach my sons and other boys with Pop Warner, and um, I wasn't officially a coach with the high school team, but I helped them. Um, I'm old school coach. I would never coach now. You got water when you earned it, right? And the water you got was not in a little plastic bottle with ice and all no, you got it from the hose that was dragged out to the 50-yard line, and if you wanted water and be 95 and humid, you had to earn it before you got it. And you got like 10 seconds. I'd be in jail right now. All right. That's why I will not coach. Um, but that would be considered toxic masculinity. But in reality, it teaches boys lessons. Life is hard. Said that. Pasu asked, should the 19th Amendment be repealed? No. And anyone who says it does, leave. I don't want to talk to you. Sorry. Ask Pearl. Pasu also wants to know if I sell those shirts in women's sizes. Yes, we do. They're in the store. So if you want this shirt, there's several other ones. I have Drizzle shirts. Just go into my bios on Instagram, TikTok, and X. You'll see a link tree. In the link tree, there's access to my store, various other things. You can buy my book there. There's a whole bunch of stuff. All right. And if you're on YouTube, you can link the store right off of YouTube. So they're there. And like I said, a portion of the proceeds get donated to charity, specifically a men's domestic violence shelter. Bobcat said, if you can't swim, don't go deep at all. Oh, my friend, you are so right. And oh, dear God, can I just jump in real quick and change off topic for another 2 minutes? I promise, no more than that. If you're going to the ocean, do not bring rubber floats. Okay? Now, if you're in the Caribbean, I've been in the Caribbean where you could, you're in a bay and you could do that calm bay, fine. If you're going where I am in Southeast North Carolina, because this happened a couple of years ago, and you are on a float, you might end up 50 miles offshore. Just saying. Like that. Do not, do not, do not go on these stupid rubber floats. And they sell them in the stores here. And the story that I was just kind of referencing was these kids were on a huge flamingo float, monstrous, and the current caught it, and they were gone. And the lifeguards don't have boats, they have boards like surfboard type things. There was no way they were catching them. They had to call the Coast Guard to go get them. All right, so yeah. Dad said, can you recommend a good men's group we can meet up on Zoom or Facebook? Yeah, mine. In fact, this fall, I used to do monthly meetings and they kind of fizzled out. I'm going to be redoing for my private subscribers and private members and members of it's called the Brotherhood of Men. I'm going to be restarting our monthly meetings with that. Again, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but since you brought it up, and those meetings are done on Zoom. They are not recorded, and I do that purposely. You can only get in by invite, and I'm there and I answer questions. And I remember last fall, it was we were having some amazing things. It might be we were talking about family court issues. One guy was getting abused, and to see the other people just come to his support in those cases, and I interjected what I could share. These were a safe space for men, and I purposely use Zoom and make sure it's not recorded and no one else can record it, because unfortunately, for example, you talk about like a Facebook group, and I know there are men's Facebook groups out there. Those can be subpoenaed, guys. Okay. If it's something that is record like this show, if like let's say you were interacting with me and I was giving you advice, let's say it was a family court issue and your ex found out, they could subpoena you with that information, even if it was private, all right? Because it's on a server. At least with Zoom, it's somewhat protected. And we had some amazing talks, and covered a lot of stuff and helped a lot of guys. It kind of fizzled out in the spring, and I take responsibility for that as much as anything. But I generally was doing it on Saturday mornings. For most of the time we planned an hour, but there was times we were going 3 hours. If it was something we needed to work on, we did. So anyway, that's that. Mr. Bean. Okay, another. You guys, Mr. Bean, Benny Hill. There. If you're younger and you don't know who Benny Hill is, go look him up. Just gonna say. Um, all right. So FNT said my dad and stepdad were different role models of what not to turn out like. That's a role model, not a positive one, right? Great point, though. Very good point. Thank you for sharing that. Stainless said, thank you for all your posts. You are welcome, sir. Let me jump over to. I haven't seen much Instagrammers. You're not commenting. I want to hear what you have to say, guys. Um, Problem with Instagram, and I might have missed them, and I'll take the blame for that, is that they show everyone who joins, and there's a lot of people that have joined, and then I miss comments. I've talked about it before. Yeah, there's no comment. Guys, if you're on Instagram, share your thoughts on this. Johnny 1984 said I was blessed with a great dad, grandpa, and 8 uncles. All were men with honor and integrity, which tells me, without even knowing you, Johnny, that you are a man of honor and integrity, right? Because that's what you were taught to be by those men. And that's a terrific thing that people don't understand. And I'm not knocking women. Women cannot teach that stuff to men, and I would argue men cannot teach it to girls. Right? Dads do teach girls things. Moms teach boys things. Absolutely, they do. Especially when it comes to things like relationships and what to seek out of a relationship. Right? And again, that could be good or bad. But when it comes to how to act in society, stuff like that, it needs to come from a man. And actually, if you can bear with me a second, I did make some notes. They're on my phone because I want to make sure I had access to them. Here are some things that, in my opinion, dads or men only can teach young boys. And when I say young boys, I don't mean 3 and 4 year olds. I'm talking up till teens, right? Early teens. Self esteem. And I know the ladies are going to get upset that I said that, but boys learn how to be um, alpha. That's probably the really wrong term to be, the right way. So people attribute alpha males to being arrogant, stuck up Chad types. That is not an alpha male. Far from it. An alpha male will never tell you they're an alpha male. Okay? That goes to self esteem. The people that I hear all the time, guys will threaten me. I'm going to kick your ass. Don't ever threaten me, okay? Because if you're telling me you're going to kick my ass, that tells me you can't kick my ass. All right? I would never say to someone, I'm going to take you out and kick your ass and all that, because I know what I'm capable of. And there have been times where I've seen guys, the most dangerous man in a room is the one standing in the corner, saying nothing, observing the room, which I tend to be that person, okay? That's the most dangerous man in the room. And I say this as someone who's worked security, I was a bouncer for years and all that. I never worried about those guys because I knew they weren't going to do anything. The blustery, loudmouth, especially the Napoleon types, those were the ones that cause problems. And Unfortunately, I would then have to remove them. Um, so self-esteem, that's kind of what I'm talking about. That they teach men how to act and behave like real men, which again, we often hear, this is women saying it, not men. They're not attracted to the guys that pander to them, right? I'm not going to go into it too deep. The reason, and I've done research on this and I've had this conversation with it, the reason those guys are like that, they're almost always raised by single mothers. Single mothers teach these boys how to act like the men they think they want. But yet, these same women aren't in relationships with the men they think they want. They're in relationships with the quote unquote alphas, if you catch my drift, right? And you'll hear them talk about that. That's what I'm talking about, right? Boys can only learn that from men who are that. So not only do they not have access to those men right now, right? Fatherlessness and a whole other reasons, but it's been that way for a couple generations. So the guys that are dads now that didn't have that role model can't be good role models because they don't know how to, they were never taught that. I'm not knocking them. But this is what I'm talking about. It's because things. Career. I put in career. Dads or men have much more influence than moms ever could on a boy's career, right? It's yeah, Jay said part I said I always said the most dangerous man is the indifferent, silent type of man. Yeah, they are. And they're the ones you never have to worry about it doing anything to you because they won't. They will defend themselves, and you're done if you go against one of them. But you get my drift with what I'm saying in that. But getting back to career, um, again, we're not talking about what career you go into, it's how you act in that career. Okay. You know, it goes to, this is something you guys are gonna hate, some of you guys are gonna hate me right now, but work ethic. There is no work ethic anymore. Sorry. I'm gonna tell you point blank, doesn't exist. It's gone. In my day, here's the old guy, OG. In my day, you showed up to work, you did your job, you did your 8 hours, you went home. There was none of this, I need a mental health day. There was none of this, well, it's sunny out, I'm going to take a day off and leave my coworkers stranded. There was none of that crap. You made a commitment, you showed up, you got paid, you know. That's been lost. Well, I'm not anymore, but I was a small business owner. I know how things changed. And that's what I'm talking about, right? That largely that mindset has been lost because the men who used to be the role models for that, they would argue that's a negative role model, by the way, the people now, is what? And it's why business owners and employees are at war with each other across the board. A lot of it has to do with that kind of stuff. All right. Violence prevention, just in general. Um, Men teach other men, younger boys and all that, not to flex, if I if I could put it that way, right? We were just talking about the loudmouths, the ones who, like to talk shit, so to speak. All right. Talking shit may make you feel good. It also very likely you're going to run into someone who's going to kick your ass, and in a very bad way, right? There, I don't care who you are. Mike Tyson in his prime, best fighter there was in the 80s and early 90s, by a mile. There were men out there that would have kicked his ass like that, right? Don't run your yap, as I call it, when you don't know what you're going against. And I taught my sons this, right? I always said, you are free to defend yourself. I told my sons this, but you need to understand there are times you need to walk away, right? If I were, and I actually met a Navy SEAL once at a party. That dude was standing off in the corner. I was kind of referencing it earlier. I could just look at him and go, and I'm way bigger than him. I had 5, 6 inches on him and easily 100 pounds. And I know what I'm doing. I wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds. All right. Not that we had any beef. There is no way I would get in his face. But yet, and I'm not saying it didn't happen then, but I'm sure he had to deal with that, right? And he's the man because I know Just from observing him, he would have turned and walked away. What makes a man is not getting into a fight, it's turning around and walking away from a fight. That's what I'm talking about with violence prevention. But you don't see that being taught, right? Not by men. Now, women will tell men, moms will tell sons, don't get into a fight, little Johnny. It's not going to resonate the same. I'm sorry. It's just not. And as I said earlier, there are things moms teach girls that dads could never do. And the other one I had was emotional intelligence. And this is also, by the way, a negative, right? So it's both, it can be a positive. I'll argue more often that it turns into a negative. Boys learn how to share their emotions from the role model in their life. So if you had that, the so-called stereotypical stoic dad that never shared his emotions, that's what the boy's going to learn. If you get one that's willing to share his emotions, he got it most likely from his dad. Moms can't do that, not to the same level. Sorry, they just can't. And by the way, there's plenty of data proving all of this. So it's not just me. And then what happens, and I made these notes, and we've already covered some of these, there's not a role model for men, right? Is boys turn to fictional role models. And some of you have brought that out. They turn to celebrities, right? Some of them become so desperate for a male role model. I talked about this a little while ago. They'll get into bad situations. You look at the quote unquote Chads out there. Again, I would love to see research done on this. I will venture an argument that the majority of them came from single mother homes because they didn't have a dad to teach them right from wrong with that. Contrary to what the ladies think, dads do not teach their sons to go get laid all the time. They really don't. In fact, we teach them the opposite, which is wrap it up, first of all. Second of all, remember, every time you do something, you could create a baby, that kind of stuff. So that's that. The other one I had is that when boys don't have a masculine male role model, they don't. I don't know how to put this. I can't put it the way I want to put it because then I'll get in trouble. They basically start rejecting who they are. They don't become men. They become what people think a man's supposed to be. All right. And I think some of you will pick up on the term. I don't like the term and I'm not going to use it. But the ones that pander and give the women whatever they want type or think that's the way to go, which turns women off like crazy. I think most of you will figure out what I'm talking about with that. So yeah, that was my thoughts on it. So I've kind of been ranting and raving a little bit. Let me just kind of go back through the thing. Get my Instagram. I finally got a comment Instagram. Chris Cox said, all comes down to men being raised by women in the associated family separation trauma. I completely agree. That's my point, right? Is that if you are a mom and you want your son to grow up healthy, you need to do everything you can to ensure dad is actively engaged with your son. Okay? It will literally be make or break. And I know they're all going to argue dad doesn't want to be bull. Men spend $4 billion a year trying to be role models to their sons. Okay? Majority by a mile of family court battles are over custody because dads do want to be a part of their sons' lives and their daughters, but you get my drift. All right? So I don't hear about that. Stop. Okay? Moms, though, have a tendency to try and cut dad out, and that's a reality, right? And that's a whole other topic. We're not going to get into that. But it's critical. If you are a mom of a boy, and I know women who their husbands have passed away, and I've had conversations. They've reached out to me and said, "What should I do?" It could be their brother, or their husband who's passed away's brother. It could be an uncle, cousin, grandfather, scout leader, whatever. Get that boy some male role models. You may only need one or two. You may need 5. I don't care. Get him some male role models and get out of the way. That's the other part, ladies, okay? You need to get the F out of the way. If you're standing there hovering, going helicopter mom, the lessons are never going to be taught. because it'll never happen. I'll tell you right now, men will not open up to other men and share things when there's women around. Just the reality. Okay. So that's that. Um, Jay said Larry Bird's story is a hell of a story. If you know it, I know it. I don't have enough time to get into it, so I'm going to skip that. Sorry, my friend, but yeah. And then you guys are all busting about Buster Douglas kicking Tyson's butt. Yeah, he got a little cocky, is all I'm going to say. Um, you know, King Adam said, I agree with your Jen always told us clocking in and late is going to get us somewhere, not anymore. There are point, right? Fair point, right? Uh, but if you have a job, you keep in mind this, and this is what gets lost with that. Here you go. Wisdom from dad. Here you go. All right. If you make a commitment to your job, everybody now looks at it as, well, if I do this, I'm going to get a paycheck. And if I decide I want to go do X instead of going to my job, who cares? Remember, you're not just affecting the job, you are affecting your coworkers. And if they did that to you, how would you feel? Right? So I'll give you a beautiful example. All right. I want you to picture working in a nursing home. People have to be there to take care of residents. It is, people will die if they don't, if there aren't people there, right? Literally, okay? Nursing homes deal with so many call outs, it's not funny. So what has to happen? They've got to try and scramble and get someone to come in, which is very difficult. Or they have to cover it themselves, meaning the workers that are there who just worked, say, a 12-hour shift may have to work a double. Try doing that sometime. Or care gets compromised. Think about a police officer, a fireman. If you got a crew of 4 on a fire truck and I'm taking a mental health day, who's going to cover it, right? Extreme situations, but it gets the point. Yes, there are times you need to take time off. Schedule it. Mental health days, you're going to get me started. And I know I'm going to get hate for that. I don't care. I really don't. Um, so anyway, CTZ said hi from Poland. I only got about 3-4 minutes. Maddie, Alienation Project. Go follow her, people. What is the most important reforms we need for family court? You want me to answer that in 2 minutes? I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. The most important reform that I will put out there is that the courts need to start recognizing how important fathers are to children. How's that to tie it in with the subject today? Instead of them viewing it as one parent is going to be the quote unquote primary caregiver, it should be both parents because children absolutely need both parents and they do best when both parents. So there's in a nutshell what I would answer that. Pasu said real men support feminism. Old school feminism, I'll agree with you. Feminism of today, not a chance. Biff Skippy's, this is a great line. Fathers teach boys how to be gentlemen. Yes, 100% agree with. 1,000,000% agree with, right? Moms can't teach boys that. Sorry. And I would counter that dads can't teach girls to be ladies. They can try. They will do many times outstanding jobs. It's just not the same. Sorry. It's just the way it is. Pastor said women like men who share their emotions. Really? Uh, all right. I've only got a couple more minutes. I just want to quickly scroll through. Girls need father as an authority and mother as a role model. Yes, that's kind of what we're talking about, right? And vice versa, by the way. Boys need mom as the role model of the type of, assuming it's a good mother, right? I'm assuming in this case these are all positive. Moms teach boys how to treat women, as do dads, and you need both methodologies, if you will. That's what makes it, and vice versa. Biff Skippy said, I used to work in a nursing home. It was brutal at times. I hear it all the time. Hospitals. I was talking with someone that works at the local hospital. She's a nurse. She was working a double already. So that, she was working 7 to 3 and then she covered a 3 to 11. And then the person that was supposed to come in and do 11 to 7 at night didn't bother to show up. She can't leave. Somebody's got to cover it. So she ended up working 24 straight hours. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, um, bunch of other comments, guys. I wish I could get to them all, but I just don't have the time. This was a great topic, I thought, and I'm going to bring this one back when Lindsay's on, also at some point. Maybe not next week, but down the road, because I really want to explore this more because I think it is critical that we do so. I want to give some quick shout outs. I'm the designer, sent a couple of roses. Thank you. And I think I covered all the other. Oh, Lucky John. I haven't seen you in a while, or at least I have a hard time getting in the comments. Thank you also for the community heart, guys. We are here every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30. Normally it's Lindsay and I, and we cover men's and boys issues. Sometimes one of us will be away and the other will cover it. Uh, I hope you enjoyed this. Give me the thumbs up and all that stuff. You know the drill. Make sure you follow the podcast, right? The podcast that I do is available on all the major things: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Last week's was part 5 of a 5-part series I did with Father X, who was a guest on the live a couple weeks ago on family court. The last one we did was on child support. I'm getting rave comments on that one. Guys are privately reaching out to me going, oh my God, I learned so much from that. So that makes me feel good. That's the whole reason I do the podcast. This one coming up, I have an amazing man who I was very fortunate to meet about a month ago. He reached out to me and we got talking through X, Twitter. He's an author of 3 books. He's working on a 4th. He's a male victim of domestic violence. His name is Jared Whitaker. And I was truly honored to interview him. And we got really deep into some of the issues that occur for men that are victims. And I encourage you to go read his books. I will have links on the podcast. That's coming out this Sunday. The one after that is going to be, I was hoping he'd be on today, is with Alex, who was a passport bro. So he interviewed him about a year ago when he first became a passport bro, and he gave a wealth of knowledge on what you need to do, what you need to think about, and all that. Almost 2 hours on what it's like now after a year. The pros, the cons, the holy craps, the things I never would have thought about that I needed to, that kind of stuff. So it's an amazing podcast, and Alex was so gracious to share his time with me on that. That'll be coming out in a couple weeks, and I've got some other ones. So new podcast comes out every Sunday at 11 Eastern on all the major platforms. Guys, thanks for everything. I truly appreciate all of you. It means a lot that you share your time with me, and all the kind comments I get. It's why I do what I do. And if I can help anyone out, and if I have helped anyone out, and some of you have said I had, it's what spurs me on and why I keep going. I don't need to do this. All right. I could be, like I said, I live near the beach. I could be playing golf and going to the beach every day and not do any of this. I do this not to make money, because I don't make money. I actually lose money, because by the time I get done paying all the softwares and people and all that, I don't make a dime. All right. I do this because I feel it's my obligation to help many boys live better lives. It's why I do what I do. And I always will. I'll be doing this till the day I die. All right, guys. I hope you have all. I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 4.